Howdy. Today I'm going to talk for a few minutes about a site that's about 30 miles north of current day Austin, Texas. And this was a site that was used as a family farm. It was originally acquired by a family with the last name of Gault, therefore it's referred to as the Gault Site. After it got sold by that family, it got discovered that there were just a lot of stone artifacts at this place. Thousands and thousands and thousands. The man that owned the site at the time decided that he would make a little extra money by using it as a pay-to-dig site where people would pay him $25 a day, and then they could come in, dig all day. They could keep whatever they found, and it went on like this for a few decades. Sooner or later, some archaeologists started getting wind of what people were finding on this site. So the first guy that came out and checked the site out thought it was a waste. He said, you know what, there's been so much destruction from these pay-to-dig operations that it would be so hard to date anything that we find here. It's just going to be impossible. So it got left alone for a while again. Some people who were, I believe the last name's Lindsay, they were related to the guy that owned the farm. They wound up buying out their family's interest, and they stayed on the farm, and they found some stuff they thought was really interesting on the site. They had used a tractor to dig down a little further, and I believe it was actually Mrs. Lindsay found a Clovis point. They also found some rocks that had like what looked like artworks scratched into them, and they contacted the University of Texas, who sent over an archaeologist by the name of Dr. Michael Collins. And this guy was one of the premier archaeologists, not only in Texas but in the United States for sure at this time. He was involved in archaeological work down at Eagle's Nest Canyon, where they discovered a buffalo jump, one of the furthest south buffalo jumps in the United States. He worked at Monteverde in Chile, where they confirmed through dating that a human presence 16,000 years ago, one of the first pre-Clovis sites to be verified. He had a lot to do with getting that verified and published, so it was becoming more of an accepted realm that people were here, later than 13,500 years ago. They were present during the last ice age. So Michael Collins had a lot to do with that. He was he's still alive. He's an archaeologist. He goes where the evidence takes him without prejudice or preconception. So he went down and talked to Lindsay, and they worked out a deal where he could get a 3-year lease on a plot of land to do a proper dig and find out exactly what they had here at the Gault Site. By this time, I believe the people that own the property also realized that this could be a very special place for history and for science and for archaeology. So they had slowed down on the paper digging. I believe they were still out hunting themselves. They like to find arrowheads, but so Collins went out there and he was digging, and literally he said you would see people looking through the trees at him to see what they found, and he knew people were going to try to break in there at night and stuff like that, so they were trying to take precautions. But this first 3-year dig, they went down far enough that they found Clovis. They found a bunch of interesting things, and they went down and they started finding stuff. They found what they call a sterile layer, and just beyond that they started finding other evidence that dated about to 15,000 years ago. One of the things they found was a stone foundation of a building about 7 foot square, and that dated to about 15,000 years ago. On one side of the foundation, they found evidence of charred bones from animals that they believe had been cooked for food. On the other side of the foundation, they found chip stones, which were the remnants of making stone tools. Now, a little bit about this site and this area. The area sort of it's at a junction of three different ecological zones. So you've got the Edwards Plateau, you've got the Blackland Prairies, you've got the Cross Timbers, and they all sort of meet right there at that corner. Buttermilk Creek runs through the site, which is fed by springs that come up through the limestone in the ground, and so it's got water in that stream year round. Even today, there was water in it when we were there. There's all kinds of game there, small animals especially, and from what they've uncovered there, that was a main part of the diet. Turtles, rabbits, things of that nature. So they weren't always just after big game. But also what they have at the Gault Site is there's limestone bluffs that have been eroded away by Buttermilk Creek over the millennia, running through this piece of ground. And embedded in those limestone cliffs are veins of very high quality, what they call Edwards chert. This chert is excellent for making stone tools. It flakes in predictable patterns. It's a piece of stone that you can shape, using certain techniques. And this, basically, where this site is, what it's believed this was used for, this was a factory. This was a place where they were mining chert, and then they were breaking it into, tradable items, either stone tools or blanks, or pieces as big as your fist. They could market and trade, and they believed that this place for thousands and thousands and thousands of years was used for this. There are flint chips everywhere on the site that you look. There's broken up pieces of this chert. You can still see veins of the chert trapped between layers of limestone, where the creek has cut through the limestone down to the creek level, what it is today. So you can see a lot of evidence. They think that this place was basically almost continuously inhabited for maybe 13,000 years, because they had everything. They could stay here almost year round. There's pecan trees, walnut trees, there's other edible plants growing in the vicinity, and on top of that there's wildlife, there's game, there's deer. At one time there were buffalo, at one time there were mammoth in this area. So and that's not counting all the small game that's there still today, the rabbits and the squirrels and the turtles and birds and whatnot. So it was a place you could find food, it was a place you had a constant year-round supply of water, and it was a place that had an almost unlimited supply of high-quality stone to make tools out of. So about the time that they found this stone floor, the 3 years was up. They felt like if they kept going, they would find more. Now they've already surpassed Clovis. So they found a building that was older than Clovis, or the foundation of what they think at one time was some sort of a shelter. So they wanted to keep going. They wanted a new lease. It took them 3 years to get down this far, which was, I believe, 6 or 7 feet deep in the ground. But they're meticulous. They're digging with, little bamboo barbecue skewers and brushes and little painting trowels, scraping just a little bit at a time, and being very careful to get what they find out of the ground without damaging it, so it can be taken to a lab and further studied, and documenting everything. They're using a dating process called bioluminescence, where they take core samples out of the dirt, and then they can measure the crystals in those samples and find out when the last time they were exposed to light is. So it's a pretty reliable source of dating I think they're hoping, or they were hoping at the time, to find some charcoal so they could, have two sources and compare them and see what happened. But I don't think that happened. I don't think they found any charcoal that was datable. So they're using the bioluminescence. They're going down, and then the Lindsays say, no, we're done. We don't want to sign another lease. So that's it. They cover up what they've already found, go on their way, and then about 2006 or 2007, the Lindsays get a hold of Dr. Collins and say, hey, why don't you just buy that piece of land from us? We'll make that 30 acres separated off from the rest of the farm. You can buy that piece of land. They wanted a lot of money for it. I've never heard exactly what the price was, but it wasn't a normal price what you would have paid for that much land back then. So Dr. Collins tried to get investor groups together. He tried to get the University of Texas system to buy the land and operate it under their umbrella. No luck. Finally, his wife, I guess, said to him one day, why don't you just buy it yourself? Buy it yourself, set up a foundation, and you can donate the land to the foundation. It'll be there forever for archaeology to be explored on this piece of land. And that's basically what ended up happening. There's a movie you can watch called The Stones Are Speaking. It's available on Amazon, I believe. You might have to pay a small fee to rent it. Well worth it if you're into archaeology. And it tells in detail more of this story. So they acquire the land. They start digging in a different spot. And they take about a 35 by 35 square spot. They build a structure over it, a temporary tent to try and keep it dry. The water level is very high in this ground, so they're having to pump the ground out a lot of times before they start continuing their digs in the morning, and it's full of mud. They're working in mud. It's not the most ideal conditions. They're getting volunteers from all over the United States that are coming in and actually sleeping in tents on site. I think in February 2011, they got snowed out. So this goes on for 7 years or so. They're excavating this site. They're finding all kinds of stone tools and Clovis tools, and also finding remnants from what they were eating, finding more evidence about how they constructed their tools and the methods they used to construct them. All this evidence about this prehistory of the United States here, 30 miles north of Austin, Texas. And then beneath the Clovis layer, they hit a sterile layer. There's a little bit of this yellow colored like clay, but nothing in there. And Dr. Collins makes the decision. He says, just keep digging. That layer wound up being about, I believe, 15 or 16 inches deep. And beneath that, beneath that, they start finding things again. They start finding stone tools that are distinctly different than Clovis. They start finding more rock shards. They start finding more art etched in stones. They found two pieces of stone, and I'm not sure if this was in the Clovis site or lower, but they found two pieces of stone that had etchings on them. One looked like cross-hatched, sort of like a big checkerboard square type deal. The other one had on it what looked like wheat growing, and in between those two stones there was sandwiched a piece of Alabates chert that had come from over 500 miles away up in the northern Texas panhandle. So again, evidence of massive trade routes going back and forth. They started dating this stuff, and they kept going deeper, and they kept going deeper, and the decision was made by Dr. Collins. He said, just keep going until you hit limestone bedrock. When you hit stone that you can't go any further, that's when we'll stop. And so they just keep digging. It took them 7 years to get down about 9.5 feet to 10 feet, I think, something like that. And they found evidence of human occupation, stone-made tools, using bioluminescence dating that go back 20,000 years. 20,000 years ago, there were people at this site and, living their life anatomically, intelligence-wise, just like us. How they were living their daily lives, how they were manufacturing their tools, all of this evidence from that one 35 by 35 square hole in the ground that they dug. I think they got over 1 million artifacts that are all being cataloged and studied, and there's a whole lab dedicated to studying these artifacts. Who knows what they'll come up with. Only 3% of this site has been excavated to date. After this dig, after they hit the bedrock and they got everything they thought they could, all the evidence they could gather, keeping careful track of as they were going down, dating on the way to find out what type of tools were coming from what type of what age, collecting bones of any animals that might be laying in there, trying to determine if these were things that died of natural causes, were they used for food, did they have butcher marks on them. So all this data being collected and is still to this day being studied. I believe the dig stopped in 2013 or 2014, and when they were done with all this, they filled it back in to preserve what was there, and so right now there's no active digs on the site at all. I went down there about a week and a half ago. It was on a Saturday, and took a tour. You can search it on the internet. There are tours. I believe it's the first and third Saturday of the month, and you have to sign up for them in advance because it's a limited number of people. They have a guide that knows a lot about what goes on there. That very informative, but a very interesting and important site. And I would really hope that they do some more investigation here. We need a new dig started at the Gault site. It's owned by the foundation now, and I'm sure if there were archaeologists connected with the university systems, they would definitely be interested in doing one. The big thing is they say, well, what are we going to find that's new? Well, you don't know until you put the shovels in the ground. That's the way this usually goes. Since you have found a new, younger than Clovis culture that existed at that time, there's no telling what else you're going to find out about them, but you need to dig. There's another site about a quarter of a mile away from this one called the Deborah Friedkin site, and the Deborah Friedkin site, they believe, was the living village. So the Gault site was sort of a stone tool factory, and where they lived was the Deborah Friedkin site, where they had their village actually set up. So there's probably a lot more to be discovered at that site as well. Very interesting, very important place for American archaeology. Check it out. Watch the movie, The Stones Are Speaking. Sign up to take a tour. It's $20 a head, and it's well worth it. Have some walking shoes on and use some bug spray. There's a few mosquitoes in there. And that's all I got for today. Take it easy. We'll talk to you later. Bye.